executive officer at E-Cargo Holdings. So there's something interesting about you. You do wines, don't you?
Sorry?
You have a wine platform,
Yes.
don't you? Yes. It's very, very interesting. So is this part of also your portfolio as well?
Yes. So we do a lot of brand distribution, technology, logistics, the full end-to-end services. So from one end supply chain logistics all the way down to brand distribution, marketing, all across Asia. So I call ourselves a growth accelerator.
Okay, so it's very interesting. So our panelists here are very highly experienced. So let's just start with the first discussion topic, okay? We will talk about digital transformation. Everyone is supposed to do digital transformation. For most people, or most companies, there is a different terminology for this. And the way we define it could be culture change, it could be new tools, technology. But what I really want to ask the panelists now, and once you stick up the hand to answer this, is really, what role does data and data analytics, what role has it actually played in your digital transformation journey? Okay. Or those, if you don't have your organization, but have those of your customers as well. And so, as people have gone through this digital change, just share with your audience your transformation journey and where data analytics has created value. So, would you like to start? Jacqueline?
Yes. I think that just picked me because so I spent about probably coming up to about 25 years in transformation of work, and digital transformation I think is the current iteration of what transformation looks like, right? And for me, if you do any sort of transformational work, data is at the center of it. You cannot transform without actually lifting the data out. More so in the digital context, because where you have digital models, digitized processes, I'm going to say, or digital outcomes that you're looking for in your businesses, or I'm going to say maybe in a different way without using the word digital, because I think it's actually an overused word. If you want a transformational outcome, the base of your organization is actually in data, whether it is at the front end where it is acquired, whether it is back end where it needs to be processed, and whether or not you're actually trying to link your processes together, which is more often than not the guts of the transformation, right? When you link your systems together, by default, you're actually getting the systems to actually exchange information, right? Mm-hmm. So your data is at the heart of any transformation. And I dare say anybody that's actually been in a transformational type project, organization, etc., one of the biggest pieces of work you would have to do is to sort your data out. Mm-hmm. You have IT running up to your doorstep and going, oh, can I have the data file today, right? And that's very, very normal.
Okay.
You've got to have data to have transformation.
Right, thank you very much, Jacqueline. So what you're saying is basically data is the cornerstone of digital transformation. It's not really just tools, culture, but really data.
It forms one of the pillars of which you will achieve your transformation. You can have, people. I cannot imagine a transformation of which data isn't one of the components. I think you need to stand up.
Yes. Okay.
No, I'm just kidding. We're conflicting here, Fletcher. What I'm saying is that if you look at any transformation program, one of the pillars necessarily has to be data, whether you put it in the IT bucket, the process bucket, the change bucket. I really don't mind where you put it, but it's got to be one of the components.
Okay, thank you. Very interesting. Lawrence, you want to say something about this?
So my background's been finance, and I kind of switched into logistics and trading and distribution, so a very different industry. But our group company has been in logistics for the last 33 years. Very traditional freight forwarding, warehousing, supply chain solutions for export and import out of China and into other markets. So one of the projects that we've been embarking on has been, as you say, transformation. Is data is just numbers, right? And in our system, so that 33 years worth of this information is just sitting there. So how do we actually make it useful? It becomes, as you say, insights, actionable insights, or can it be used as alternative data for other industries to leverage? So, for example, in this case, we're talking about financial information. So I think for us as a logistic company, we actually have a lot of visibility across movement of goods from A to B. History of traders between buy and sell. So we know the revenue, we know the purchase orders, we know how inventory moves during a certain time period. So we take that information, digest it, and give it to other industries. They can actually use this information to make better decisions. So that's one use that we've been doing over the last 18 months. We've been cleaning up the data, as you say, and make it actually more usable. That's kind of what we see as the data use.
That's actionable data. So, I mean, Wilson, for you, is you're working at the NTR, you must have tons or millions of data now. Are you going through this journey as well?
Well, I just joined NTR not too long ago, so
Yes.
I'm not going to use NTR as
Right.
a sample. But throughout my career as a finance professional in-house, okay, you're going to start questioning about yourself. Well, first of all, if you're looking at transformation, you're talking about three pillars things, people, process, technology, and at the heart of it, I agree with them, like all those generate data, okay? However, once you reach a certain point, you start questioning about yourself, okay? I got all this data, how am I going to use it, okay? Try to use it there internally, you only know what you're doing, okay? But what is the market itself is doing, that is where I found most challenging, okay? Not saying the data out there is not right or wrong, it's just a matter of, are you able to access reliable data outside? Okay, are you trying to get your data from Google, from our friends DNB here? How could you mirror two images together? That's the key.
Okay, very interesting, Wilson. So you're talking about a lot of unstructured data here. This is really a challenge how to bring this data together. Okay, so James.
Yes, Fletcher.
Oh.
Yeah, before I answer the question, I did want to say something about NTR. So they're definitely doing something with digital transformation, because when we use the trains, you can actually check on your phone when the train is coming, when you're not even in the station. So I find that just coming from New York, I find that really good. So,
You know more about NTR than I am.
yes. Anyways, one of the interesting things about digital transformation is that people rarely do it for digital transformation. Usually it's to solve business problems. Like the biggest pain point in the business, the biggest pain point in the business is what they're trying to solve. And what they end up doing is digital transformation. So usually they're trying to make it cheaper, better experience for the customer, operationally more efficient, faster. And then what is the outcome is almost always digital transformation, which is using automation, data, and analytics. So an example of my own career, I spent like 20 plus years mostly on the trading floor, trading stocks, bonds, and derivatives. So in 2007, I was the head of derivative analytics at one of Hong Kong's top derivative trading houses. And the challenge, the pain point, was we were trading so much derivative products that our salespeople would be writing up contracts into the night, and they'd go home at 2 a.m. in the morning. That was the pain point. And the solution, of course, is hire a lot more people. And that's a very expensive solution. It doesn't scale at all. So what we did was, okay, why don't we have the machines generate all the term sheets? That might take, what, 5 minutes? But wait, if we're going to capture the data, let's capture the data when we're talking to the customer. The salesperson is talking to the customer. If we're going to capture the data digitally, we should just auto-book the trade that the trader normally would do. The trader's a very expensive person. Why not have a computer book the trade? Wait, if it's in the system, why not feed it into our risk systems? And we can see real-time risk data, like you see your delta, your gamma, your vega. And then, wait, it's already in our STP process. Why not feed it into books and records? Go send it to management, MIS it. And what started solving the business's most painful problems, very expensive problem, mainly to save money, ended up being digital transformation. So that was like my own experience. That was in like 2007. Since then, now I've joined DNB. So like DNB, we do digital transformation, automation, data analytics to help other companies.
Okay, thank you very much. But I just want to also ask the question is, recently, in the past 3 years, COVID itself, how has that actually impacted your transformation journey and the way that we use data analytics? That's, I would like to answer this question. Jacqueline, take the first.
Sure.
Yes.
Yeah. For D&D, we're uniquely positioned because we're actually helping companies
Yes.
engage how to deal with these problems.
Yes.
So, COVID, and let me add, in addition to COVID, pandemic, trade war, and actual war has impacted supply chains all around the world. And it's a big story in the news. And so, for companies, they often have to understand how strong are my supply chains? The companies involved in my supply chains, they're strained. Are they in regulatory trouble? Are they in the news for problematic issues? Check my suppliers. So that is data and analytics greatly help with that. If you have the data, if you have the analytics, you can tell how strong your supply chain is, your supply chain, and all the issues related to the pandemic, like how impacted are they in the pandemic. When we, not to sell this analytics, but we actually have a score, a COVID score, that let you look at each company and the impact to them with COVID.
Okay, interesting. You want to say something?
If I look at what's happened in the last 3 years, so we work globally, as you know, lecture. A couple of things, right? One is that James is quite right. I think a lot of companies, when you start your data journeys, you look at taking cost out. I've always advised companies that is the worst thing you can do with data. Data should actually drive incremental revenue, right? So the companies that get their strategies right actually use data initiatives to drive incremental revenues and new business models, right? That's not to say you can't use it for everything else. What I'm saying is that should be your focus for any sort of new step up, right? So when something like a pandemic, and I agree with James, a pandemic, a war, whatever it is, what I see, definitely last 3 years, is more people stepping into the data arena because they're going, okay, what else can we predict? That's the first thing. Where else can we, what else can we do? So you're now shut off, you can't travel, you can't do this, you can't do that. It's like supply chains and stuff. How do you actually still get to your customers? How do you actually still conduct your businesses? And I think with the use of data, what you've got is now, instead of what we used to call an international marketplace or global marketplace, you've got single marketplaces. The single marketplaces with segmented individuals, right? Whether you call individuals corporates, individuals, whatever you want to call them, right? But it is to me, it's a single global market, and you've got to be able to use your data in a fine-grained way. So that's the second change I'm seeing. The third change I'm seeing when something like pandemic comes on is something like, I'll tell you a story. So Amazon's amazing, I think, in their use of data. But what they found was that a lot of their pre-COVID algorithms, the AI algorithms on their Prime customers, their shopping customers, were all pre-COVID data sets. And they went on for about, they're onto it, right? So about 3 days, and then they go, sucks. We really got to rewrite all, our algorithms. Who's rewritten them? I bet you, if you take a scan of companies that say, oh, I do AI, or I do ML, well, did you go relook at this, right? Or are you drip feeding your data sets coming in? I tell you what I've seen in the last 3 years, that the good companies, what they're actually doing is re-looking at what they're translating the impact, the business context of the impact of the pandemic into data, and then actually using it to forecast the how-to scenarios as whether or not the pandemic continues or whether or not it's clear seas after this, right? I see that good companies doing that, and then I see everybody else going, well, I'll just drip feed, my machine learning data sets with whatever's coming my way, because it's a gradual change in business behavior. So they're not really trying to get out of the headwinds.
Okay, thank you very much, Jackie. We're talking about the book. Sorry, you want to add to that?
Oh, no, just a quick one. I think, well, COVID really benefited in our industry, logistics for one. So we're in that. So there, from sea freight to air freight, everything went up 200, 400% in terms of cost. So we're not doing much volume. We're also e-commerce, so that really, with everybody changing their experience to shop online, it really also benefited us. But on the data side, because of more people have to spend more money now, whether they have to invest more into their digital platforms or invest more into their supply chain efficiency, they actually request a lot more information from us to tell them, okay, actually, why do we need to spend this money here? Why does doing FCL or LCL, which is full container loads or less container loads, is actually more efficient for shipping this location? So actually, we need to digest more and actually have more team members to overview that data to actually provide the reports back to our customers to convince them that actually this investment is worth spending because they haven't spent this kind of money. They didn't have to put so much into their digital platforms or digital marketing or social, etc. So this is kind of where we have to change all of that.
Yeah, I'm going to add to this something else, right? That's really interesting. What I've noticed is that a couple of years ago, you had to sit with the board and actually explain to them why data was so important, why you have to be a data-driven organization. And now, I think the conversation's completely flipped, right? It's like, okay, what are we going to do? And they're all, I'm going to say, you know, the board's definitely, I've been in contact with, they're data savvy now. They're thinking about, and how do we use this, and what do we use this for, and how do we get something else, right? It's really changed the conversations.
Okay, that's very interesting. So do you have anything to add to this?
I think that's very interesting from a very big external view of things. I'm more internal guy, so what really happened to us during the COVID is all of a sudden all your inbox is getting a lot more email all of a sudden, and a lot more report actually going to your inbox nowadays that you are having tough time to catch up just by reading it. Okay? So for that, you need to question about yourself. Why am I still getting reports through emails? Not the dashboard that you could do insightful actions on the spot. Okay, if you are still getting more than 10 Excel's report or some kind of report today, you're probably in trouble on all these things going on right now. So the use of data, even in-house, has changed dramatically. In the past, we tried to create a report from the data. Now we try to use data to drive a different behavior. That's really what happened about the digital transformations. It's actually the applications of your own data is entirely different now.
Now, that leads me to another question here, lead on, is to do with what you just said there. Why do we need so much data in our inbox? Why are we still doing reports? Data visualization. Do you use data visualization for organizations? And can you just perhaps explain to the audience why data visualization at this moment it's one of the most important tools that an organization can use. And how it's actually helped you or your customers. Who would like to start with that?
I'll start it.
Okay, sure.
Yeah, I think everyone's familiar with data visualization to a certain extent. It's kind of been embedded into our lives more and more, so it's happening. I'll give you a story. 20 plus years ago, I was working with some compliance people in New York, and to do their surveillance work, they had these like dot matrix printouts. It was like a stack of paper. They used their ruler and a marker, and they would just go line by line to do their surveillance work. Obviously, they didn't. There was no visualization back then. But now, with visualizations of charts, graphs, dashboards, heat maps, actual maps, this visualization helps you see patterns and relationships in the data that is harder to see when you're just doing it with a pencil and a stack of printouts. But because it's getting more embedded into our lives, it's certainly better. It's a picture's worth 1,000 words, and it's only going to happen more to us. It lets the single compliance officer work like the productivity of 10. So it's something that we'll see more and more.
Okay. Do you have data visualization
Yeah,
in your organization?
I guess it just saves time for us. So we, if I take a story, we have an example. We have a team of global stores, simple online store that sells into China, right? And we do about 4,000, 5,000 orders a week, right, in the store. And basically we sum it up. If you have to go through every single line of data to see, hey, where should we spend our marketing dollars, which city, which demographic, it'll take us forever. So luckily with these, there's a lot of data visualization tools that just plug it in for a whole country, you can see the heat map. Shanghai is actually our top selling consumers there. They spend average order value about this much, and the average age is this, and you can actually just focus, right, and spending on marketing dollars there. I guess the other one that's more recent is obviously Shanghai lockdown, right? I'm sure a lot of people on LinkedIn probably see a lot of images of these like boats, there's like ships that are currently stuck outside the port, right? But if you really go down and drill out the numbers, there's actually right now, I think as of Monday, there's about 260,000 containers that are backlogged, that are waiting to get onto Shanghai port, right? This is not just compared to like the peak season that's coming soon. So imagine the time period that you have to go into sift through all that, right? Which containers to get off first, and then there's a lot of tools that are helping, right? A lot of shipping companies, ports now clear out. So this is things that
So you see value in, you all see value in data visualization, but is it really difficult, expensive to perhaps implement? I think these are questions that people would like to know. Is there really value in having the organization moving to a data visualization platforms?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's a big data exercise. It's an expensive exercise, but the relationships and the patterns that you get to see, it is definitely worth it. It'll let like the example I gave before, the compliance officer who can do the productivity of 10 people is really what's happening here due to these dashboards. Lets you pay attention to the changes as opposed to looking at all the data. There's just too much data. So it's a big, expensive data exercise, but I think really to the business community, it's definitely worth it.
Because one of the key things about data visualization obviously is your predictive element to data visualization. Are any one of you actually using this to do predictive analysis or to do prescriptive analysis?
So let me give you an example in the telecommunications industry. So just maybe as a background, right? I think there's 4 types of analysis, right? And most data people would know this. There's descriptive, which is what has happened, right? Diagnosis, why has this happened, right? Predictive, where and when is it going to happen again? And then prescriptive, which is how am I gonna navigate it when it happens next? Okay, so for us in the telco industry, and I think in telco we're probably a little bit more progressive when it comes to data. We got lots of data. You use a series of them. I never think about predictive or prescriptive. I think of it as a series, and if you follow the journeys of events and behaviors through telco, you'd probably say, I need descriptive to go, why has a fault occurred? Okay, so if I use another industry, why has someone put in a claim, for example? Then you go to diagnostics and or what has happened? Someone has put in a claim. You go there and go, why has someone put in a claim? When and where will someone put in a claim again, etc. So you follow the journey of your customer with you rather than do a single point in time. And we do this in things like engineering, for example. So you look at 5 million faults and these are micro faults, they're not like major faults. You want to know all the things within your normal standard deviation. You don't want to look at the big ones that are outside. So then you go, what has happened is a fault happened in the network. Why has that happened? It happens, etc., etc. And then you go, now, how, when, and where is it going to happen again? So can I forecast that I'm going to get a fault over in District 10 versus a cable running Singapore, Japan tomorrow, right, etc. And then what are the possible scenarios and outcomes can I actually simulate to actually determine what's the best route that I do now, tomorrow versus later, right? So you would use a series of these analytics to actually map, but you got to be quite clear in your mind what your customer journey looks like, or your user journey. Most people use it for customers.
Okay, because you just made the analogy of engineering. I'm sure supply chain is the same as well, but you do or you will use a lot of predictive analysis for supply chain.
Excuse me, Fletcher, could you speak a bit louder?
Sorry,
Because it's very
yes.
hard to.
Sorry, yes. Sorry about that. Yes. Okay, so for you is you do use a lot of predictive analysis in your supply chain, don't you?
Yeah. So supply chain, again, it's not really rocket science, right? It comes down to it. It's like we know exactly which period of time where volume needs to come. So definitely the data comes in to support us on how do we plan our booking, right? Container lockage, container rentals, game-shift bookings. That's typically the logistics side. But what's interesting, well, actually another case came up was the use of alternative credit data for credit, right, for credit scoring. So we actually had a customer that, for typical, when you go to bank, right, it's a 3-year financial statement, company background, founder background, and start to go borrow money. But this one is, company's been operating for 18 months, right, but they don't meet a lot of the bank requirements. However, because we provide them services around fulfillment, logistics, warehousing, as well as we get all the order information or sell-through information. When the bank was looking at, hey, we're selling, I'm just using an example, it's not really this, but I said, you're selling cups, right? And they're like, oh, it's a random product, right? Why would I fund this, right, for giving to you guys? But if we're able to tell the story instead, it's actually, this particular cup is selling 90% sell-through every 30 days, right, in the order. It changes the whole dynamic, right, on the predictive side, whether this is a risk or not risk, right? So that's actually where we've been helping our customers, right?
Can I add to that? I think interestingly enough, a lot of the utilities and telcos being one of them, we get asked for a lot of that actually, like to generate, I'm going to say outcomes that are for alternative credit. And the reason is because if you're, so one is like stability. Have you been at the address for 18 months? So I could say this person's pretty predictable. Do they pay on time, ahead of time? Do they pay their bill in full? So, we get actually approached by, funny enough, financial institutions to say, could we have alternative credit scores, or could you actually enhance our credit scores with your data? That's really quite interesting.
Yeah. Okay, so this is more of a sort of physical reason. But on the finance side, I'm sure Wilson or James can actually explain. On the financial side, obviously, predictive data can help us to reduce these risks.
I think you need to
Sorry. Yes. Yes. Sorry. On the finance side, I'm sure that predictive analysis will be able to help you or help these people here who are going to implement data analytics in order to reduce compliance risk. Can you just talk more about the sort of compliance risk, the risk where perhaps data will be able to help people in order to don't move into fintech or move into a banking environment. I don't know what terminology is for financial risk.
Actually, from a finance perspective, or even from a quality compliance perspective, once you start turning your paper process into those data, you're going to start seeing patterns. Okay, those are the patterns that you're going to need to focus to manage the exception, not the one that's happening within the boundaries. You need to think about those, but the exception ones is where the spot that you need to really drill down on what's going on. Like approval takes you a normal 3-4 days, 5 layers of it. All of a sudden, you're going to start seeing some pattern that is outside of the boundary. Why these things approving 15 minutes? Right? You thought, yeah, that's a big improvement, but you know what? If you drill through it, you're going to find that someone is not even working it. But in the past, you don't see that on paper because it's circling around for days already. Okay? So those are the things that you can manage by the second and try to find out that these are the conditions that you are having, and these are the ones that you are having problem, potential problem. Obviously always have a reason, but you
James, what you're seeing in terms of things such as credit risk or other sort of financial risk, the ability to predict these risks, how important is that for the banking industry?
Sure. To answer this question, I'm going to summarize what my distinguished panelists said. I think they're exactly right. They're going to see patterns. You're going to see patterns in the data once. And for the businesses, their secret sauce of the business is usually to analyze these patterns. So, for example, the credit data, what you're trying to do is predict whether a client pays back a loan, whether an account receivable will be paid back, and whether you should extend that loan, whether you should, how much you should extend that loan. So you need data, you need analytics, and you need your secret sauce. At every bank, at every corporate treasury, they're trying to predict this. Data, you can source data to do this. On the prescriptive analytics, same. The prescriptive analytics is no more than just data-driven decision making. So, if you look at the businesses of Hong Kong, finance is very big. Their biggest pain point, one of their biggest pain point, is how to comply with compliance. Whether they can even accept the customer, they would have to get as much data as possible to see if they can even accept that customer as a customer, or whether they're on sanctions list, regulatory. Whether they are in the news for litigation, any of these things. So those are decisions that are heavily supported by data. And then one of my favorite subjects, real estate. If you're ever buying real estate, you want as much information as you can get on the seller. If you're buying and it's on the seller, you would like to get as much information on them as possible. How much do they want to sell? What kind of financial shape are they in? That company that's trying to sell to this commercial property, all that information would be really useful, and those are driven by data. No one would ever make those kind of business decisions without it.
But should I perhaps add to this, right? So if you think about practical uses of predictive and prescriptive, because that's what we're talking about, I can think like in about, say, 5 years, if you look at most of the car manufacturers, right? Mercedes has announced, Volvo has announced, Renault has announced, they're all going EVs. And EVs have, as we all know, multiple sensors, right? And they generate a lot of data. And I think this type of model you will see very shortly is probably things like insurers and banks actually partnering with EV companies. And what they'll do is they'll say, right, I can have enough sensors to see how this person treats their car. So they crunch on the brake, they crunch on the gears every time they go around the corner, minus point, right? They leave their tank till it's almost dead, and then they fill it up, right? So you've got enough sensors on an EV now that will give you that information as an insurer and as a bank, right? So what is this credit risk that or this risk of this person, this risk profile of the person? Then you say, okay, I've got enough information about how this person drives now, right? That's the how information. They're terrible. They never make a roundabout, right? And they've had 3 near misses in the last month. Now, would an insurer like to know that? I hope so. But what if you add prescriptive analytics in there, whether it comes from the EV or the insurer, or a combination of the two, and said, now I'm going to teach you how to drive down the roads, because I'm never going to teach you how to drive properly, right? Yeah, some people just really not that great. You see the parallel parking in Hong Kong.
I was going to say, this is data I don't want to. I don't want to give this to my insurance company.
I was going to say it's geometric, right? But so then imagine, okay, so just say parallel parking, which a lot of people would struggle with. How about I direct you now so that you don't hurt the rims on your car, you can scratch the side of your car, make it an insurable event. Please go over there. The next parking space is 200 meters from me. I'm pretty sure that is going to be quite real. But to me, to get the most use out of these sorts of analytics, companies actually need to look outward, and I know we use this a lot, like, always look outward, always look from the customer's point of view, but this is where I say your transformational journey you really need to understand your customer and what your customer is going through each time before you then just use brute force and just take your data and go, I'm going to use data and do something with this customer, but it's all internal. You never actually look at what's surrounding this customer. I think that's where, a lot of companies, I would like to see a lot of them actually move up that down.
So predictive is prescriptive data, which the panel that just described, is a very, very important part of your data analytics journey. So that's something that I think will encourage you there. In the interest of time, I just want to ask another question, and then I'll throw the question to the audience. Is for you implementing a data-first policy and a data-driven organization, first of all, do you think it's going to be expensive? Is it really expensive venture to do? And secondly, how should people, or how should the people here who are thinking of doing this data analytics journey, where should they actually start?
Okay. A practical experience is you're going to find a consultant to do it for you. But before you go that route, let's first ask about yourself. Okay. Could you throw away all your reports to date? Okay, that's number one. Okay. If you don't think that you can throw away all the email reports you're getting, you're not ready for it yet. Okay, because you're still in a very comfort zone. As an executive, this has to start at the very executive level. So if you can throw away those reports, most of the time it's meaningless. Okay, then you're not ready to start yet. But if you're bold enough to say to your staff, for the next month, I don't want to get any report. Mark down everything that I'm asking. Okay, those are the points that you really need to run your business. Okay, if you can't ask your staff for those questions, that means you are having trouble understanding yourself on what you try to manage. Because all these predictive, everything is going to be driving you crazy. Because they are from 1 to infinity right now. Okay, you need to ask yourself, what are we trying to manage, and let the data funnel it into your questions correctly. That's very, very important.
Thank you very much, Wilson. Just one more to answer, and then we'll throw it out to the audience. Perhaps things you actually miss.
Sure. I would say that I've seen two routes. I've spoken to many innovation labs in Hong Kong, and those people are out there to make this transformation for many of the reasons that we stated, to be better, faster, cheaper, give the customer a better experience. But aside from that very good situation, I think for most companies, really they're just trying to solve their big pain point problems, like the core to their business. So when we work with, say, e-commerce companies, virtual banks, banks, but they have, if you ask any of them, there's always a pain point. There's always a big pain point. And for them, that's where the digital transformation starts. They go solve those pain points, and it's through digital transformation. Whether they call it that or not, it will be that. And for them, project management is a challenge for everybody, but for them, at least they're fixing their specialty. So these big problems are the specialty of their business. So like the example I had given you, where we just completely transformed the trading of derivatives, that was our specialty. We know how to value these transactions. We know how to produce these documents, and we put it all together because that's the nature of our business. And for most companies, that's where it's going to happen.
Okay, thank you. Perhaps what I will do now is I'll throw the questions out to the audience. Are there any burning questions that people would like to ask our panelists here? Yeah, sure.
Thank you very much for sharing. I just have a question. Jacqueline, you mentioned possible transformation of industries like insurance. Do other panelists foresee other kind of industries that data analytics will deeply transform or even revolutionize? Thank you.
I don't know. I'm not sure if this is an answer to your question, but from what I can see, there's definitely a couple of areas, right? One is, going to go back to logistics. It's all the different parties that have different, that connects this whole supply chain. Everything's still very old-fashioned, especially in Hong Kong. Everything's like bill of ladings is still paper, right? Like with laser dotted printed lines with the different layers, right? So that's one area that's gonna definitely from the data standpoint needs to change to kind of facilitate a more efficient process. Second is there's one that I think, but it hasn't really happened yet, is really what we call digital labeling on products. Basically, in China, we do a lot of trading in China offline. And one of the things that really gets us is these labels of the ingredients that you just have to tell exactly what the percentage of this and percentage of that. Now, there's a lot of professional shoppers that come in, and they usually just come buy lunch, and then if your label has one spelling word wrong, then basically China's commerce bureau will come and find you for it. So I think this is one area that needs to be changed, right? Generally from a product safety standpoint, and basically traceability. I see that coming from my perspective.
Insurance is a very touchy industry from my perspective because we run into in the digital transformation journey, you're going to run into privacy issues regardless. Especially nowadays, your personal data is out there. Okay, 10 years, probably 15 years ago, when we in Samsung tried to do predictive marketing on using some of those information, some of the other competitors were too far. Okay, and then it backfired. So all of a sudden, privacy law is everywhere. Okay, that's really stopped a lot of personal level digital transformations in that angle. Really. So this is something that we really have to watch out with is are you going to evolve to a certain extent that someone's going to put a rule around it and then all of a sudden
Yes, I'm going to go big here and say it's going to change everything. It's going to change everything, and it's not even digital transformation within a company. It's going to be digital transformation between companies. So it's already happening now. It's already producing products you've never seen before. So if you look at your mobile phone, you have apps that essentially you can buy something where buyers and sellers can be verified and trusted. It can arrange data to be transferred to the bank so you can make payment, and data can be transferred between logistics companies so you can actually get delivery of it. Essentially, the digital transformation between companies through APIs. So and if you look at by industry, the competitive pressure by industry is immense. So in virtual banking, if you want, what does it take to do due diligence to originate a loan? Well, you need to be faster, and the only way to be faster is to get data and analytics to originate the credit. What 1 month, 1 week? Well, how about a few seconds? So we're heading in that direction. If you look at other industries, it's like e-commerce. We work with a lot of e-commerce companies. Yeah, they need the scale of business now is so big that you need to do business with, say, by someone in Brazil, but you don't know anyone in Brazil. But we're at Hong Kong is a global business hub, so you need data to make those kinds of transactions happen.
Thank you very much, James. So, I believe we have a question from another viewing folks.
One of the things that I thought would be a good segue into this would be addressing, like, how do you deal with all of the security and reputational risks that emerge when there's this much data that's being used or processed. You've got security issues, cybersecurity, you've got fraud, all of these different things that need to be, I think, looked at in a much more strategic way if you're going to be using this much data. Who owns it? What right do I have as your client to give you that data? Maybe you can address those risks in terms of that kind of big story that James was referring to in terms of it's going to transform everything. But then there's this whole aspect that hasn't really been looked at in terms of security, protection, fraud, those types of things.
Visual on your side, Lawrence, that you have a lot of these issues in here as well, especially in your supply chains.
Yeah, no, that's a really good question, right? Because it's always been a question between our business, right? Yes, we have all this data. Yes, we can make all these insights, but then we become accountable for it if it goes into another industry for making decisions. So this is kind of where, for one end, we work a lot with HPME with their commercial data interchange policies, right? Because that's how they govern. Well, there's policies around personal data, but commercial data, there's also policies around it that need to secure. So we work with them on that front. So there's basically a bit of compliance that's put around acknowledgement when we can share this data. But that's one end to protect us on that front. On the other end, where it's actually where it comes down to our use of consumer data and how it helps us to make decisions. Because we're a listed company, right, in Australia, so we do have to provide a lot of governance, a lot of compliance, usage rules around it. So we are quite transparent, right, when we tell them in terms of who we are working with, the data that we're going to use, right, the data security that we have to make sure that's encrypted, because we can't let other people be able to co-use. And there's also a lot of training on people. I think we didn't get to touch on it, but like when we're talking about transformation, it's actually the team that you have in your group, whether they're understanding the importance of it, they're helping you safeguard, and how do they actually change their mindset if they're not in that kind of mindset originally, right? That's good. So I guess those are a couple of things that we've been trying to take, but it's not a full answer. So it's a great question.
So, thank you very much. Because of time issues, I think we have to take one more
Maybe we'll
question.
take
Sorry
it
about that.
offline.
Yes, take some offline as well. If you need to ask the panelists,
Yes, please. Maybe a question for James. We talked at the very beginning about this current situation, with the trade wars, with the real war, and COVID, so this is a really special time. But as we can see, there's a lot of people or countries trying to influence, spreading fake news, and I'm just wondering if you've seen some attempts to correct data in some jurisdiction, and how do you control this type of information? Can you guarantee that the data you have is really accurate?
Yes, actually, part of data is it has to be trusted, it has to be independent. So there is a methodology around managing data, and so everything you said is also applied. So you look at the sources, the official sources. You use a lot of technology. It is something at D&D and at people who are specialists in handling data. This is their profession of addressing just that. And one additional thing is, of course, we're employing new technologies as well on that. So that'd be like artificial intelligence and machine learning to help with that exercise.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you very much for all your questions. And I think I would like to thank the panelists as well. So people can thank. So if you need to ask some questions offline, please ask them tougher questions. So thank you very much.
Maybe we can have a photo for the panelists and the moderator. And a quick update, the Consulate General of Israel was here just now, but he has something urgent, he needs to go. But he left a message, if anybody are interested in connecting to him, you can just let us know. So, or you want any information about Israel, you can just contact him. So.